Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Live Interviews. As many of you know, the Live Interviews was born out of our earlier this year. We had our first virtual event. And because there's so much generous talent, not only here in Las Vegas, but around the country and even the world, we have been able to extend that experience and introduce the Live Interviews. The Live Interview format, we bring on guests. We speak to them, talk to them about their lives, talk to them about what they've been doing during the pandemic and what they're hoping to do once it's done. And then, of course, we get a little taste of their talent. Today is no exception to that. We're very excited about our guest. But let me just quickly talk about the reason we're here. The reason we're here is an organization called Neurofibromatosis Network. They support a group of individuals, 128,000 across the country, in the US alone, that have this disorder called neurofibromatosis. The reason I'm here is because my daughter is one of them. In 2011, my wife and I began an event that was aimed at doing something small to help this community and to help this organization, and it has now grown. We are excited to celebrate Las Vegas's 10th annual NF Hope concert on October 18th this year at 5 p.m. It will be available on our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. You can join us for free. There are plenty of opportunities for you to get involved. But one of our milestones, other than being year number 10, is that we are this close. We are on the precipice of breaking $1 million raised for this cause. To help us get there, we are asking for your help. You can actually join us, and I am going to drop this right on here. Go to 10yearsofhope.givesmart.com. And you can not only make a contribution right now, but you can also find out some fun ways that you can experience the NF Hope concert on October 18th. Anyway, we're about to dive into an incredible episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Live Interviews. This episode actually continues a tradition over the last couple of weeks to start interviewing those people who have either been a part of the NF Hub concert in the last 10 years or are going to be joining us on October 18th. We're very excited to have our next guest, join us on October 18th, but even more excited to have a conversation with him today. Our guest today is John Bayless. John Bayless is a pianist, composer, recording artist, and teacher born in Texas. He started to play the piano by ear at age 4. At age 15, he studied at the Aspen School of Music with legendary piano teacher Adele Marcus, and at 17 was off to New York's Juilliard School of Music for further study with Miss Marcus, who shaped his musical gifts and encouraged his extraordinary ability in improvisation. Invited to join the inaugural class of NYU's Musical Theater Master's Degree program as a composer, he studied with legends: Leonard Bernstein, Julie Stein, Arthur Lawrence, Betty Comden, and Adolph Green. It was Maestro Bernstein who had a particularly impressed with John's talent at improvisation and composition, and a lifelong friendship ensued. His performing career has afforded him great opportunity to appear in some of the world's most famous concert venues and with some of the most prestigious orchestras. They include the famed Carnegie Hall, Avery Fisher Hall, the home of the New York Philharmonic, Tanglewood, the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles, Davies Hall in San Francisco, as well as some of the most esteemed venues in London, Tokyo, Budapest, and more. He has shared the stage with the Philadelphia Orchestra, the San Francisco Symphony, Boston Pops, the New York Pops, the London Symphony Orchestra, the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, and many, many others. He has toured extensively, playing to sold-out crowds in the US, Europe, and Asia. His numerous recordings have been at the top of the charts since the mid-'80s, and many are still available. He has educated musicians at some of the most highly regarded institutions in the world. Mr. Bayless is currently the artistic director of the Waring International Piano Competition in Palm Desert, and he loves having hands-on involvement in helping shape the future and careers of young and aspiring pianists. Let's take a peek at the life of John Bayless.
The thing that is so, what I find a real test is if a man and a piano can hold an audience, just that, then that's all that's needed. Now comes a part of the program where I take your suggestions and do some improvisations, play your favorite songs in your favorite style. Let me give you a little example. What if Beethoven had written Embraceable You? Santa Claus is coming to town in the style of Stravinsky.
There's nothing better than watching a true artist, a true master at work. Well, this true master experienced something that most, unfortunately, don't have to face. 12 years ago, after 3 decades of performing internationally and recording numerous albums, in one fatal instant, Mr. Bayless suffered a stroke that immobilized his right side and left him alone and isolated from the world he'd known and loved. His journey back to the piano has been a courageous one. Slowly, John relearned to play the piano with just his left hand. John continues to perform and inspire people around the world with his story. Currently, there is a documentary in the works that chronicles his life titled Left Alone. And until the world was struck by this pandemic, John was beginning to perform a new one-man show called John Bayless, One Hand, One Heart, My Life and My Music. We are honored to welcome our guest, Mr. John Bayless. John, welcome.
Thank you.
I have to tell you that, we met at the Composer Showcase a couple of years ago. We were just discussing this before we came on the air, and I was immediately touched by your performance. I mean, not only blown away by musicianship, but the story. I live my life helping people who face challenges that most don't, and I've been blown away by how many do it with courage that I couldn't even imagine. And you are certainly one of them. So it is truly an honor to have you on today. And so let's get to know you.
Thank you.
We definitely want to talk about your performing career, but I want to start at the beginning. I'm always fascinated by what gets people into music. Now, of course, you were 4 years old when you started to play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
So what drew you to the piano at such an early age? Was music a family tradition?
My mother was a singer,
mm-hmm.
and she was a very conscientious singer. She would have her accompanists come over once or twice a week, and they would rehearse. And I would sit under the piano and be fascinated and fell in love with it. The whole process of music and hearing the harmonies and everything. I remember her singing, "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning," and Schumann and Schubert Lieder and all these different things. And it was extraordinary. And I went to church. Of course, I was raised in Texas, the panhandle of Texas. And there are 2 things that reign supreme in Texas. One is the Dallas Cowboys, and number 2 is the Baptist Church. And that's where I went, and I heard music live, and I would play on the pew in front of me imitating the pianist and all this stuff. And then I would go down to the piano after the service was over, and I would push her off, and I said, "Let me do it." And I'd play the hymns, and all by ear. And that's it. That's where it was. There was no question about what I was going to do in life and what I was going to pursue. My brothers always said to me, "You had it lucky. You didn't have to make a choice." You knew. So,
that's amazing. That actually answers my next question, which was, was there ever did you ever imagine doing anything else, or was it like just finding home and you got to sat down at the piano?
The only time, I must be honest with you, Jeff, the only time that I felt any sort of disconnect with that which had previously made the whole reason of my life was after I had the stroke. Because I mean, you saw how I played and you saw what I was doing. And to have half of that cut off, I mean, there's such a psychological and the whole idea of how to project music. And I thought, well, maybe it's time to do something else. I've never had the opportunity to even consider or entertain the idea of being in some other profession. I thought about, well, retail, like whatever. It's just so many things, and so many things were converging in my mind and emotions at that point to see what was going to happen. But as fate or God would have it, there was no question about that. My reason of life is music.
That's incredible. As a musician, of course, I understand that better than many. So at 15 years old, you received a scholarship to Aspen School of Music. You're introduced to the legendary Adele Marcus. You continued with her at Juilliard School. So at some point in there, you made the transition from loving just to play to sort of discovering this love of improvisation and composition. At what point did that happen? And was there something that pushed you in that direction?
Well, yes, actually. I'll be brief about this. When I was 15 and I was at school, at the Aspen School, one Sunday afternoon in particular, that's when I had my lesson. And I went to her house that she was living in there. And she said, "Dear, I'm not ready to start yet. Just warm up, practice a little bit. I'll be out in 10 minutes." So I started playing this improvisation, a sort of a Bach fugue, very Baroque thing. And that morning, Sunday morning, my mother and my brother and I had gone to the Baptist church in Aspen, and there was no one to play the organ. So I got up and played the organ, and I improvised this sort of fugue. And I liked the way it sounded. I liked the subject. I liked the melody. So I started playing that. And she walks out and says, "What is that?" And I told her, I said, "I'm just making it up." "No, you're not making it." "Yeah, I am." So we spent the whole lesson on that, as opposed to Mozart's sonatas or Chopin's scherzos or whatever. And she never forgot that. And whenever I was having trouble later on at Juilliard with technical things, or she would always just say to me, "Dear, just imagine that you wrote it. Just think about put your head in," because there is this different head of the composer head and the performer head and this classical pianist stuff. And it really helped. But after I got out of Juilliard, it was just, I had to make a living. I had to do something else,
Yeah. Well, you definitely made a living eventually, right?
Yeah.
But along the way, you had some amazing firsts. Some experiences that most musicians spend their entire career dreaming of having. And the first, is your Carnegie Hall debut. You know, it was 1980. You know, I imagine a musician in their 20s dreaming of such a thing in the future, let alone having it be a reality in the present. So how did that opportunity come about, and what did that mean to you as a young musician?
Well, it was in this period, of course, I was out of school, and I had become acquainted with some very wonderful people in New York City. And man's name was Nat Lefkowitz, and his wife was Sally. He was the chairman of the board of the William Morris Agency. And she and Nat became like my surrogate grandparents. I mean, I was there and they took me to openings, and it was very lucky, very serendipitous relationship. And one Saturday, Sally calls me in the evening and she said, "Do you have a clean white shirt?" I said, "Of course." She said, "Well, put your blue suit on and get over here. There's a piano and I want you to play." So I knew when I was given that command, I must fulfill it, you know, because no one ever dealt or disagreed with Mrs. Lefkowitz. And so I go over there and I'm they sit me at a table with Lee Strasberg and Ellen Bernstein, and so all of these people from the Actors Studio, and they're having a benefit that night. And so this man across the table, Carl Schaefer was his name, he said, "How would you like to play in Carnegie Hall?" I said, "What? You don't even know how I play. You never even heard me." He said, "Well, if you're involved with them, you can't be bad. And I do this concert every year with this Orchestra of New York, and would love to have it." It was like it just came in my lap, you know. It fell in my lap.
Wow.
And so I played, and the conductor, since Jeff, you're a musician, you know, did you ever hear of a series called Music -1, where the orchestra parts were recorded on a record and you could play your solo concerto parts with them to practice?
No, I wish I had, but no,
well,
I never.
There was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. There was this conductor from Germany and Austria named Emil Kahn, and he developed that series. And opera singers would rehearse with those records and everything. And he was a conductor, and I met with him, and he said, "We want 2 American pieces, want 2 American concertos." Rhapsody in Blue was the first, and the second one is your choice, whatever you want. So I was trying to think, I have 6 weeks, 7 weeks to learn a new piece, and especially playing Carnegie Hall. So I, believe it or not, I chose the easier way out. I wrote my own. Yeah, so first half was Rhapsody in Blue. The second half was my essay for piano and orchestra in 3 movements. And
amazing.
So whatever, that's how it started.
So you, let me just get this straight. So in that time period where you were worried about learning a new piece, you not only wrote a piece, but you scored it for orchestra.
Yeah, I had. I must say I had help. I had an orchestrator, Joe Giannone, was fantastic Broadway orchestrator at that time, and he helped me lay it out. And because I mean, to write a full score for full strings to symphony and harp, and of course I threw the kitchen sink in it.
Why not, right?
more is better, right?
Exactly.
So anyway, that's what happened.
That's incredible, amazing. And then another moment in your career that takes my breath away, and we discussed this ahead of time, was because I grew up with a love of the New York Philharmonic, but most especially of Maestro Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein. So you were in graduate school at NYU, and you had the opportunity to study under legends in the industry, which included not only the maestro, but also all of the people that I listed as I read your bio. But with the maestro specifically, you eventually developed a friendship with him. But Am I right in reading that you actually met him previous to that?
Yes.
So how did you meet him?
I met him on my birthday, which is his birthday. We have the same, August 25th.
All right.
And they were doing a 60th birthday concert at Wolf Trap. And a really good friend of mine was directing it for PBS, and he needed a score reader. In other words, what he's directing, just somebody to follow the score, the Beethoven, whatever.
Right.
And so he wanted me to do it as giving me a birthday present, and that was going to be the intro to Leonard. So we actually met on our birthday in 1978, which I was about whatever.
That's all right.
I'm older now than he was when I met him. It blows my mind.
So how does that blossom into a friendship?
It just did. There was like this electric connection immediately, which was very, very strong. And I had several opportunities that following year to play at parties or something he was having, and he was just fascinated by the way my mind worked musically, and he would give me things to do, tricks, or I say, okay, now this next measure, play this in 7/8. Now let's play this next measure in 4/4/4/4. I mean, all this stuff, and I would do it, and because everything was a contest with Leonard. I mean, when he played charades, I mean, it was like life or death. I mean, it was so. There were times where he would get so angry when he didn't win, and that he, was not clever enough to come up with. Was always a game, always that type of environment, I should say.
Right. Amazing. That you have the stories is just blows me away. So you're living. You spent an entire career. As you said in the bio. 3 decades leading up to this moment, and then in 2008, your life changed in a fraction of a moment. So, what happened that night? Was it, and in that moment, did it register with you the effect that it would have on your ability as a musician, or were you just focused on what was happening to you medically?
It was all focused. There wasn't any focus. It was like, it was just complete flatlining thinking. I mean, it happened in the middle of the night, and had a really bad dream, and I woke up and told my partner about it, and then 20 minutes later, I went back to sleep, and then he woke me because I was breathing heavily. I couldn't, and at that point, I couldn't move my right side, and I tried to sit up in bed, I couldn't. He had to prop me up in bed while he called 911, and it was scary. It was really scary.
So, at what point does it register with you what this means as a musician? What this means as a musician that uses both of your hands on an instrument?
Right then, I mean, I didn't realize I was just trying to process what was happening, and dealing with my anxiety and my fear. Because I didn't know what the hell was going on, and I couldn't speak at that point, really. And my speech came back within a couple of hours. But I just shut down, because music was a way of life. It was breathing. It was, as I said, the reason of living. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, what the? I mean, what am I supposed to do? And so I'm in rehab. I love saying that. some rehab. And so what does my mother do? Being the the mother of a musician, she goes to Walmart or Costco and buys me this big keyboard and brings it into the hospital. That was the last thing I wanted to look at, you know? And it was just like, anyway.
So did you think that there was a possibility you could play again?
I knew in the back of my mind, I still had one hand. And I knew what I used to do with one hand, you know. And I gave it some thought. But that was doing that. Then this when I started thinking about doing something else, having some other completely other life. And I was a Steinway artist, meaning that I played the pianos everywhere and whatever. And Henry Steinway, the great grandson of the original founder of Steinway Sons, was a great friend. He was in his 90s. He and his wife Polly were very close to me, and he passed away during that period. In September, I had a stroke in August, and he died in September. And they wanted me to come to New York and play at his memorial service. And I'm thinking, how can that? I can't. I mean, that's kind of an important performance, you know. Right. And here I'm playing with one hand. I can't. It's too overwhelming, so I thought about it, and there was another memorial service they were having a few months later, and I said, well, I would really feel more comfortable. Just, I don't know what I can do yet, but I will be there. So I played this at the memorial service that they had, the second one, and I composed a piece for him, for Henry, elegy for him. And that was the first thing I'd done after this.
Did that sort of turn a light on of possibility to you?
Well, you know, it's like when you're not looking for it, it kind of slaps you in the face. And I remember the effect that afternoon had on people. I mean, these two colleagues and artists, different artists, were there, and there was, I don't honestly think if I played with two hands, I would have gotten the same reaction. You know what I mean?
Right.
And my partner Bruce at that moment, he said to me, "It's not about playing the piano anymore. It's not about that anymore. Right. It's something else." That was the opening.
Well, you have gone from there, and you've truly become an inspiration. I go back to when we first met, and I saw you play. There's something about an incredible musician. There's another thing about an amazing story, especially a courageous one. And for me, there is no better combination of things to really grab you down to your core than to combine a great courageous story with amazing music. And you started doing that this year. You were working on a brand new show that sort of chronicled your experience. And it was called One Hand, One Heart, My Life in Music. And I love that it was called a one man, one hand show. Not just a one-man show, but a one-man, one-hand show. And you were actually preparing to go out on the road with it when the pandemic hit. I'm just going to throw the graphic up there. So tell us a little bit about this show, where it came about, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed that maybe at the end of this story you have, word that there may be some dates in 2021 where people will get to see it.
Well, I have two great friends that were in my life back in the 70s and 80s and in New York City. And I met up with them in New York. Stuart Schulman was this marvelous, fantastic man who he's a writer. He writes screenplays and everything himself. And we were talking, and he said, "Johnny, this is a story. It has to be documented. It's you know." So he and we've written the show, and we performed first in Long Island at a theater there in Port Washington, and then I did excerpts in LA for the County Museum, the first act I did, and was booked to perform in Hawaii at the Honolulu Theater this last March. But of course that went by the wayside, and then supposed to go to do it again in November, but that's gone by the wayside. So I'm just waiting for something to happen.
You promised us that you let us know, and we will share it to everybody and do our best to be there in person, especially if it's in Hawaii, by the way. I think my wife and daughter would probably be okay with that.
Yeah.
So speaking of your work with Stuart Schulman, he not only helped you with the show, but you and he are working together on an actual documentary called Left Alone.
Yes, he's a filmmaker. That's how I actually met him. Our mutual friend Niall Brenner, introduced me to Stuart. Niall was working at William Morris at the time, back in 1980, and Stuart and Niall had gone to college together, and Stuart needed a composer for his thesis film. So Niall recommended me, and I composed his music, and that's where all of us started working and collaborating together. And Stuart is like a driving force behind a lot of stuff. He's charged my batteries again. It's harder now, Jeff. It's harder. I used to sit down at the piano and just play anything I wanted to, in any style. Now, to do all that with one hand I have to work at it. So life, there's some sort of balance here, I guess.
Right.
I don't know, but thank God for him and Niall that they've kept me in the groove, so to speak.
Well, I'm very excited that part of that groove means joining us in October for the 10th annual Line of Hope concert. But before we dive into your participation on October 18th, one piece of this documentary focuses on your experience with a Japanese ice skating champion, and she now uses your music for her programs. So how does something like that come about?
It's another one of those things that just. I was walking by the TV room in my condo in Ranch Mirage 2 years ago or whatever, and the TV was on, and it was the Winter Olympics, and they said now the Japanese figure skating champion Satoko Miyahara is going to skate to the music of Puccini. Well, my ears perked up, and I sat down and I started listening, and it was the music track started with her at the beginning of Madame Butterfly, and dum dum dee da dum dee da, very dramatic. And then 2 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds into the music track, it morphs into my rendition of Un Bel Dì, One Fine Day, from my Puccini album. And I thought, that's not me. And then there was this huge big run at the end for the kind of run up the piano. And Yeah, that was me.
Wow.
And it flipped me out. And not only did she play that excerpt, but she went back, they went back into some orchestral music and stuff, but the whole routine ended with the end of my Un Bel Dì on my Puccini album. They cut it together. I was so touched, so blown away, so honored, so excited, everything. And since I played in Japan, I had some contacts there that maybe we could get, I could just thank you. I said, I wanted to write her a letter. And after that, and into this whole relationship. And she's, as I've found out, she and other ice skating competitors and champions have used music from other albums of mine. And but anyway, I played a concert in Tokyo and she was there. And she was part of the reason I played there. And I wrote this piece, Sakura Sakura, which is a famous Japanese, old traditional Japanese melody, Japanese song. And I did this arrangement and she skated to it. Now she's
wow. Well, we actually have a video of her skating to this, and with your permission, I'd love to share it.
Yes.
Truly amazing. It has been an honor to talk with you. I can't tell you how excited I am as my daughter's oboe makes her sounds downstairs, but I can't tell you how excited I am that you're going to be a part of October 18th. Your story, your music have touched me from the moment that we met. And I have no doubt that when you show up on stage on October 18th, and for the people who are watching this now, that they will all agree with me. So I do want to tell everybody that if you want to see more of John, he will be joining us on October 18th at Las Vegas's 10th annual NF Hope concert. As I mentioned earlier, not only are we hitting this milestone, but we are on the precipice of breaking $1 million raised for this cause and for this incredible organization, NF Network. If you would like to help now, you can get us going there. It's 10 years of hope at .givesmart.com. That will take you to a place where you can not only make a contribution, but also enjoy potentially some fun ways to watch the NF concert with you and your friends at home. And we hope to see you there. John, I know that we're going to see you there. Again, it has truly been an honor. And
it's over?
It is over, believe it or not. But
okay.
The conversation has to end.
Okay.
Get together and find more things to talk about. And
okay.
I hope that we keep in touch and don't wait until October 18th to have our next conversation.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining this episode of the live interviews. And we look forward to seeing you next episode. Thanks so much.